Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Michael Holt and I will be chairing the meeting today. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones and laptops are on silent. Additionally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. If you are intended to do so, please inform the committee clerk. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via the fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, which is Ipswich Town Football Club. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs and not the lifts. Do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. We have the following people in attendance this morning. Councillor John Ward, the Cabinet Member for Finance. Melissa Evans, Director for Finance and Procurement. And David Fevier Ward, Head of Finance. And Jenny Smithies, Senior HR Finance Business Partner. Sorry if I pronounced those incorrectly. And we also have Alyssa Norman, Lead Officer for Overview and Scrutiny. Can I now move to the agenda? Do we have any apologies or substitutes?
Thank you, Chair. We have no apologies this morning.
Super. Do we have any declarations of interests, pecuniary or other registrable or non-pecuniary or registrable interests? Are there any to declare? Okay. That's noted. Thank you. Anyone else? If we move on to item 3, which is BOS/25/7, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of November 25. Are there any points regarding accuracy of the minutes? No. Could I have a proposer for these minutes, please, and a seconder? Councillor Osborne proposing, Councillor Carruthers the second. The lead officer will now conduct the vote. Are we happy to do it by hand, or do we want to do it by mod.gov?
Happy with whatever, Chair. Happy for hands.
Yep.
Easy.
All those in favour of the minutes? Yep. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Chair.
Item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Item 5, questions by the public.
None received.
Excellent. Item 6, questions by councillors.
None received, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 7, BOS/25/8, the 2026/7 draft general fund budget and medium-term financial position. I would like to invite the Cabinet Member to introduce this item to the committee. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. This year is probably the most difficult we have faced, with continuing cost pressures and expected funding cuts. The Government conducted the Fair Funding 2.0 consultation in the summer and published the consultation response and the Local Government Finance Policy Statement last month. Details of these are provided in your report. We will get the first 3-year settlement in many years, which is good, as is the move to simplifying the funding streams by merging many of the newer grants into the Revenue Support Grant. However, the intention to allocate funding based on a revised and extended needs-based allocation is expected to penalise rural areas. In terms of our budget so far, gross expenditure is forecast to be just under £29.5 million, which is an increase of 2.63% on the current year, whereas gross income, including funding, is expected to be just over £28.5 million, and that has only increased by 1.72%. Now, a huge amount of work has been done to reduce costs, and the Cabinet approved increases in some fees and charges last month, resulting in an impressive £2.5 million reduction in the net cost of service, but we still have a budget gap at this stage of £906,000. We cannot finance this entirely from the Financial Resilience Reserve, as it will become too depleted too soon. And so, even if government funding is better than expected, we must make further savings and increase income. A full list of inflation, contract increase and income increase assumptions is provided in Appendix B. Section 6 of the report details the assumptions we have made around the expenditure budget items. The largest of these is, of course, our staff budget, and even with the pay award and incremental salary increases, we still have a small reduction in the salaries budget, and most other employee cost items have also remained nearly as before. And we have assumed an employee pay award of 3%, which is a £371,000 increase, and increment increases of 2%, amounting to £198,000. But there is a reduction of more than £1 million in the total employee cost budget, almost entirely due to the 3-year revaluation of the pension fund, that has enabled us to reduce the contribution rate from 26% to 16.4%, saving £896,000. The sharing of staff costs in the Memorandum of Understanding with Mid-Suffolk has been revised to reflect the time staff will be devoting to each council, and this will give us a saving of £249,000. Other expenditure assumptions include a decrease in premises, supplies and services, a large increase in major contracts due to new food waste contract cost of £1.5 million, which is offset by an additional £40,000 income as a result of the new Abergh VAT agency model. There's also a small increase in capital financing charges. There is an increase of just under £2.2 million in grants and contributions, almost entirely due to the extended producer responsibility grant and the new burdens funding for food waste collections. These will be needed to cover the increased revenue costs of implementing better recycling. Section 7 of the report details the assumptions we've made around the income budget items, and I have mentioned the new fees and charges that were approved by Cabinet last month. The forecast total is slightly down at just under £5.25 million on the current year due to an expected 2.2% volume decrease, and the forecast total for all fees, charges and rental income is also down at £7.7 million. However, at 27% of gross funding and income, this is a significant part of our budget. Investment income is forecast to be similar to this year, but the overall benefit to the budget will increase by £1 million as we won't have to make another reserve transfer to cover any loss of value of the pooled funds. As a result of the uncertainty over the finance settlement, we haven't yet included any amount for the government grant funding, which has put a pressure of £1.3 million on the budget at the moment. We are, as usual, proposing a 2.99% increase in council tax, the maximum permitted without holding a referendum. This is necessary and expected by the government. The Revenue Support Grant Resource Adjustment assumes this. It will mean a rise of £5.79 to £199.52 per annum for a Band D property, generating an additional £214,000. A further £134,000 will be generated by the expected 0.86% increase in the tax base. The recently announced business rates changes are listed in the report, and there will be a business rates reset, changes to the multipliers and levy rates, and higher tariffs. There will also be changes to the Section 31 grants and new retail, hospitality and leisure multipliers, replacing the current relief. Other changes are listed in the report. Due to the extent of the changes and the unavailability of funding details, we haven't been able to draft a budget at the moment, but the forecast for 26 to 27, prepared when setting this year's budget, has been included. We can expect significant changes from this when the provisional settlement is published. Section 8 of the report lists the pressures in the budget, the changes from this year, and the savings that have been found. We have identified savings and increased income totaling £6.7 million, offset by pressures of £4.4 million. This results in a reduction of the net cost of service compared with the current year of £2.3 million, which rises to the £2.5 million that I mentioned earlier when the waste changes are taken into account. The position over the next few years shows our earmarked reserves depleting to the point of being negative at the end of 2029 to 30. This is not something that can occur in reality, but indicates that we will not have sufficient reserves to fund future budget gaps. Section 10 of the report shows the forecasts for the medium-term financial plan period up to 2030 to 2031. Although the current local government reorganisation timetable has the establishment of a new Suffolk unitary or unitaries in 2028, the process is still in its early stages, and we will continue to plan on a 5-year horizon. And Table 14 shows the costs and demands for the Council's services continuing to outstrip the resources available to fund them. with increased forecast deficits each year, amounting to a cumulative shortfall of £11.9 million over 5 years. The Financial Resilience Reserve will not have enough funds to finance the forecast budget in 2029 to 30, and this is an unsustainable situation, and significant savings and or increases in income will need to be identified. The other uncertainty facing us is that the implementation of LGR has costs currently unknown that we will have to bear. Finally, we have a much reduced capital budget of £3.8 million, giving us savings in interest and MRP charges. In summary, further work will be done in the next few weeks to close the remaining budget gap, and we will soon know the extent of that task when we receive the provisional finance settlement this week. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Members, do you have any questions? That's committee members. Councillor Wyman.
Congratulations, Councillor Ward. A challenging prospect to try to balance the budget. I think there are loads of things I think we really need to understand, but I think initially the challenge is immense in terms of, I couldn't help but note in table 14 to do with a structural challenge, and I'll get to the question, Chair, in a moment. The Council therefore has the structural budget challenge of having to permanently reduce its base budget or increase its income before it uses the Financial Resilience Reserve. I mean, that's pretty telling, isn't it, really, that effectively we'll have no money left by 2029, given no changes. But going back to the sort of question, really, and it's the first one really was on the pension. Obviously, the employer pension changes have made a big contribution to helping us support our employee costs this year in table 6, I think it was. We've had the triennial valuation, which has led to the change. Do you expect, and bearing in mind the local government changes, reforms, etc., whether it's 1, 2 or 3, do we expect any uptick in demand for people that may take redundancy potentially with their pension at the same time over the next 24 months? Has that, I know we can't affect the valuation itself, but there could be a potential uptick in demand.
I think that question is probably better directed to the head of paid service. I can't predict how many people will take early redundancy, but the pension fund is overfunded at the moment by a considerable amount, over £1 billion. So there is, I would suggest there's capacity within it to withstand whatever might happen in terms of early redundancy amongst all of the councils in the county. It's not just us, obviously. It's pension fund for all of the councils. I don't know if Lucy wanted to add anything to that?
No, I think that's
Thank you, Chair.
Members, other questions? Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. You say there's still £900,000 to find to save this year alone. There must, I mean, you say was it over £1 million already you mentioned? There must come a point where the savings we need to make are going to affect the services we provide. There must be a tipping point where we can't provide effective services because when is that likely to come, or is it even, how is it affecting the services we're providing already, the savings we're having to make?
Yeah, I would suggest we've probably reached that tipping point now. We're having to cut back in some areas of the council's operation, and that might have to increase in the years ahead. I don't want to do that because I believe that obviously we have the statutory services, but the discretionary services, which is where we can make cuts, many of those services are the ones that people really value and make a huge difference to the lives of some people. So I would not like to see us cut those either, but we're having to start looking at where we can make cuts. It's difficult, it really is, but we're in a no different position to many other councils, and I think people need to understand that the challenges around local government finances the funding is just not adequate to deliver the services that we need to provide and people expect us to provide.
So if we're going to, I mean, looking at the table 14, so we're going to have a deficit of 1.8 million next year. So where's that going to come from? Is it anywhere?
Yeah, you've got to remember that these numbers here are currently without any assumptions around government funding. We are expecting something in the settlement. We don't know what yet. But nonetheless, you're right. The numbers, the forecast deficits are increasing year on year, and something's going to have to give. These are going to be decisions and discussions that the Cabinet and the wider Council is going to have to face next summer when we start looking at next year's the year after's budget.
I have a question as well, really touching on that, Councillor Ward, is Councillor James has touched on it really about the discretionary and statutory services. I mean, according to our information, according to the information I have, we have basically 10 statutory services and around 16 discretionary, which will no doubt expand as you look into them. And I think he's sort of nailed it really with the question that there comes a point, and I think you've just acknowledged that, where hard decisions have to be taken. And I fully understand and appreciate your comment about how these decisions could affect certainly vulnerable people within our district. I think over the years it's become noticeable how through government cuts the onus has been put further down the chain to the district council, whereas before it was the county, and before that it might have been the health authority and then central government. The cuts have come down to the bottom where we sit, and that we're left with the burden of making those very difficult decisions in the future, possibly, that will affect those that are really vulnerable. But I'm pleased in a way that you recognise that those decisions are coming, and very hard decisions will have to be made, because I do feel as though it's over the years we are now the ones responsible for making those tough decisions. There's nothing else behind us, whereas before there was the district, there was the county, there was the health authority. We work closely with those bodies to provide services, but yeah, it's a very difficult time, I think, coming up, and some of those decisions are going to be tough. One of the things I heard you mention as well was in the papers we've got a 906,000 deficit. I think I heard you say it's 1.3 million. You used that number in your presentation. What was that referring to? Was it a revised deficit, or was that? I'm sure I heard you mention 1.3 million.
No, I don't recall mentioning 1.3. I'm just. I mentioned the nearest number I got to that was the food waste contract cost of 1.5 million. That's the new food waste contract that will start next year with better recycling.
Okay, I made a note of 1.3, but I'll come back to that.
Just having a look through my notes. I don't have yes, sorry, yes. Yeah, the fact that we haven't put in any assumptions around government grant funding, and that's put a pressure of 1.3 million currently. Based on comparison between what we got last year in terms of all the grant funding, and taking that down to a zero assumption at the moment. Now, we are expecting something in the local government finance settlement, so that 1.3 million pressure will reduce, but at the moment it's impossible to say how much we'll get, whether we'll get 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. We won't get 906,000.
So are you saying you've got 1.3 million pressures at the moment, but your assumption is it will go down to 906 with the government?
No, the 906 is based on that 1.3 million pressure in grant funding.
Yeah, and sometime this week
we will get the provisional settlement.
We should hear from government what we will get.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But that will also be complicated by the fact that there'll be further announcements on the business rates regime, which is undergoing, as I've mentioned, significant changes. And we won't really know that for, well, when do you think we'll know that? End of January.
Yeah.
So again, we won't know any potential business rate income until January.
How that's affected by the changes to
Yeah.
tariffs, levies, reliefs, etc. Reset.
Yeah, because there is a lot of concern amongst businesses, certainly in hospitality, how those business rates are going to affect their position, let alone our financial position.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in? Because I have been in dialogue with Shared Revenues Partnership about that, because we have been contacted by a lot of businesses. So we're going to work with them to try and get something on the website so that businesses can have a look and understand, because the multipliers have changed. So although they're set as they are now, there are going to be transitional reliefs as well, but we just don't know the scale of that transitional relief. So we don't want people to panic too much, because there is going to be some help, but we just don't know the quantum of that help that's coming. So we want to put something on the website just to help.
That's a good thing to do, because there's a lot of scared people out there at the moment.
Yeah, and they are scared because certainly many of our retail, hospitality and leisure businesses for several years now have had significant relief in the COVID and post-COVID period. And that situation is going to change.
Members, other questions? Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to point 8.21 in the pressures and savings section at the bottom of page 34, top of page 35, where it says that Babergh has made specific decisions to reduce investment in certain activities, blah, blah, blah. This includes activity related to climate change, sustainable travel, biodiversity and waste education. Can you tell me a bit more detail about the reductions in those areas, please? Unless it's in the document somewhere else and I've just missed it. Thank you.
It's not in there, and I must admit I don't have the specific. Melissa, do you?
I think probably it's more around staff that are spending probably 100% of their time on certain projects. I think if you had a look at Mid-Suffolk's budget report, there's a number of items in there that clearly talk about climate change and biodiversity specifically. They're investing a lot of money in biodiversity, 1.8 million I think was the latest paper that went through, and that's built into the budget as well. So along with that comes staffing resources to deliver those activities. So there's probably more in Mid-Suffolk's report, but a lot of it is climate change and biodiversity work that they're funding.
Thank you. So I know that our biodiversity manager, I think he only does like 1.5 days a week for Babergh. So it would be that he's reducing his time working for us and spending more. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just give me a bit of clarity on bed and breakfast, on table 4, a bit of clarity on bed and breakfast costs, which I noticed have gone up by about 60% from 235 to 375. Is that, and I also noticed in table 7 that rough sleeping, we had no grant last year, but we've got £178,000 in the budget for 26-27. Are rough sleeping and bed and breakfast interlinked, or are they separate budget items?
I think we might be showing it slightly differently this year, because some of the rough sleeping funding and the homelessness funding in previous years has gone into earmarked reserves. So we're now showing it as core funding, if you like, coming into the budget. And just on the B&B costs, we do recoup some of that through housing benefit and some grant as well. So they should equal each other out. So whilst there's a pressure in costs, you will see there's some income, and I think it does show in the table in section 9. I think there's some increased income that's offsetting that B&B cost. So they do cover each other.
Thanks, Melissa. Also on table 4, and I don't want to go on about it too much because I know I talk about insurance more than I should do really, but I couldn't help but notice there seems to be like a cross business increase of around about 10%. I've seen it in the employer insurance contributions, I've seen it in general insurance, I've also seen it in the premises insurance figure. Is that in anticipation of this year's renewal, or are we looking at, are we still negotiating?
Yeah, so we'd anticipated a 10% increase in insurance, all of the like the premises, the motor vehicle, etc. So we've had the prices back now. So the budget was included before that. So it was a 10% increase on what we had in there last year, and we're now just crunching the numbers through to basically to direct costs of the insurance between the general fund and the HRA.
Thanks, David.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. May I have two questions, please? Thank you. My first question is on table 4. One of the higher figures, or highest figure, seems to be other premises, supplies and services. Why is that so high? Has everything just been, that doesn't fit into another category, just been kind of dumped into that section? Or is this something, you know, because it's a particularly high number, can you tell us the kind of things that might be and why it's so high, please? That's my first question. Thank you.
I think David's just looking for the details on that.
Having a look on the spreadsheet for us.
Would it be better if Councillor Grandin answers the second question, which might be easier to answer? Do you want to go with your second question and perhaps come back to the first?
Thank you. On page 23, 6.18, it's talking about the former Babergh premises at Corks Lane and describing the financial situation there. Please, could you tell us a bit more about that and perhaps in more layman's language as well?
Given that our estimate of the final funding or final income for that is that we will show a loss on that project, we have had to make what's known as an expected credit loss reserve and put money into that to fund that expected loss. And what we have now is there's some, we need to make some assumptions at the moment on how we've got to account for that over a period of time and whether we can charge it over the useful lifetime of the assets, which is 30 years, or whether we have to account for it over a shorter period. But nonetheless, we've got sufficient in that reserve to cover funding it for several years yet before we need to top up that reserve. So the money is there to cover the hit on the revenue account for that loss. Yeah? That's pretty much it. Okay.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So have you now found the other information?
Any other councillors got any other questions? Councillor Wyman, do you want to fire away and whilst they're still digging?
Thank you, Chair. On 7.2, key assumptions, we've got 5.229 million going to 5.254 million, down by about 25k, which I appreciate isn't a great deal. And the sort of narrative around that was, even though including due to inflation and assuming the full cost recovery, it's noted that we expect a downturn in fee volumes. Could you perhaps just add a little bit of extra context around that point?
A lot of that's come from our...
It's still not nice, it's still money.
It's not all SIL, is it?
A big chunk of it.
Yeah, well, the big chunk of it is SIL, the expected income from that, the admin fee income from that. But there is information coming back from operations is that some of these services are expected to have volume decreases. Volumes do change on a year-by-year basis, and this is looking at trends over the past year and extrapolating to next year.
Thank you, Chair.
found the answer yet to Catherine's?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's quite a significant number of areas in there, so there's 52 different kind of categories within here, but just a couple of the bigger amounts. So there's 200,000 in there for financial resources, which is around things like the Pay 360 contract, so for collection of money, collection of council tax, etc. We've got 139,000 in there for car parks, for other contracted services. There's PV panel maintenance in there as well for 104k, and then again, so that's electrical testing, and then contracted services for 82,000 as well. There's 40k in there for, yeah, my apologies. Yeah, 40k for Babergh for other contracted services as well. So those are some of the major ones. I can provide you a more comprehensive breakdown if you require that.
Yep, by all means, yeah, if we could have that, that would be useful. If I can ask a question, Corks Lane, really, it's 6.18. The MRP, we seem to be still in the same position as last year, Melissa. We still are awaiting external advice. Why has that not been clarified over the past 12 months? Because we were in exactly the same position last year of the unknown, whether we could extend this over 30 years or not. So, has that advice not come forward, or is it far more complicated than we thought?
Very, very good question, and I'm quite frustrated by it as well, because we have given our proposal to the auditors some time ago. The audit didn't take place this year for 24-25, so there's been delays. There's been resourcing issues with EY as well. David and I did meet with EY actually last week to go through this, so they had a few follow-up questions. So we are expecting an answer by February next year when they complete their high-level audit, so we should get an answer by February, but we have been chasing and pushing and chasing for an answer on this.
So may that information in February have some impact as well on this budget?
Potentially, yes. If they disagree with our treatment, then it could have an impact on us having to use more reserves if they say it all has to be written off in 1 year. But obviously the timing of that will be when the final sale of the last flat is at the site, so yeah.
So that could clash with our timings before this budget goes to full council and cabinet.
My recommendation, if that does occur, would be that we would use reserves, so I wouldn't be building anything. If I don't have the answer by February, I won't be building anything in, but I will be keeping a close eye on reserves, and I'll be making reference to that in my Section 25 report in February as well.
Members, any further questions? Councillor Jameson.
Thank you. On point 4.4 on page 14, you say one of the main issues is the rising demand, number of people accessing our services. Just wondered if you could give more detail on what is this down to cost of living? What are the services people are now? What is causing the increase in people accessing our services, and what services are they accessing? It's causing these pressures.
Yeah, I think it's across the range, and that there's more demand for help on things like homelessness, that sort of thing, and we see also, I think, from the point of view of some of our community grants and support there, that we know that a number of our communities do want help from us, and we do provide that.
There's also SRP with the housing benefit and universal credit.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, so through the Shared Revenue Partnership, there's increased demand on services regarding housing benefit and universal credit. That's causing pressures there. So it's a range of things. I guess we can get a full list at some point if you'd like, but I'm just sort of struggling to think of particular examples at the moment.
Councillors, any other questions? We have one other member here who's not on the committee, Councillor Clover. Do you have any questions?
Yes, Chair, if I may. If page 32, we've got reduced income SIL, street naming and numbering, and incorrect car parking income. budget, and that's for 246. Could you just explain what the incorrect bit is there and how that all splits down, which parts belong to which?
I don't have a complete breakdown unless David can remember how much the car parking was. The reason the budget was set wrong in 25-26 basically, so we have corrected that, and obviously moving from 25-26 to the correct position for 26-27 has obviously reduced that down. But I can give you the breakdown of how much is SIL, how much is street name and numbering, because obviously there's a combination of those things making up that, so we can provide that breakdown if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Melissa. Yes, so are you able to say which way the incorrect car parking income, was it too high or too low? Too high. Thank you. Okay. So, could I have another question, Chair?
Another question, yeah.
Thank you. In those terms, so looking at it now in terms of what we had was the whole year of 25-26 on full cost option A, the costs there were 1.2 million. Now I'm seeing that the projected income now is 1.166, so it's very close to full cost recovery. Is that correct? Can you confirm?
Sorry, what is
full
that
cost
specifically
recovery for the current year was forecast to be £1.3 million. So for 2026-27 for the new year, 1.3 million. 25-26, yeah, the full cost recovery for 25-26 was, as you're right, just under 1.2, 1.194. So we're not far off that. But I think that you're looking at the paper that went to Cabinet quite some time ago now. I think the Director of Operations might have updated figures on what the full cost recovery is. So it'd probably be better to get latest numbers, but yeah, we're not. I guess we're not far off that, but we're not at that yet. And when we're looking forward to 26-27, the full cost recovery will have gone up.
Right. Thank you. Could we have those figures? Could we have sight of those figures? Those the updated figures from. Right. Thank you.
Another question for me, really. Page 34, 8.18, it mentions about planning officers will have less capacity. Are we secure in the new local plan and the budget for that we have sufficient resource available to carry forward the local plan and complete the local plan?
I think you probably need to check that with Rob Hobbs, but the team is fully resourced, I believe. I think there is a suggestion that there might be a reduction in some of the admin support, but at the moment we're looking at still meeting our timetable, our deadline for the new local plan, so which will take us past local government reorganisation. So the culmination of that will be the responsibility of our successor council.
But we have set aside sufficient money to carry us forward.
At the moment we have, yes. Yeah. But it is tight, but my understanding is there is enough, yeah.
Members, Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. Looking again at 8.18, you're talking about planning officers having less capacity. We keep hearing on the national news that there's going to be a lot of changes to planning, and there's going to be more planning officers and so on. So are we getting any money from central government for that? Are you aware, please?
I'm not aware of any coming through at the moment. No, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill is soon to get approval and become an Act of Parliament, and there'll be some significant changes in that on us. But how that will impact us in terms of resourcing to meet our new responsibilities, planning. But also, you've got to remember our resourcing of planning depends very much on the workload that comes through. If we have fewer applications, then we need fewer planning case officers, irrespective of what any Act of Parliament might say. And we are very much dependent on the workload that comes through.
Just picking up on that, on table 9A on page 24, the strategic planning income is somewhat drastically reduced, forecast to be reduced this coming year by 105,000. Any reason why that is?
That is the fall in SIL admin fee income.
Solely the SIL?
That is solely the SIL. I think, as I said, I think there is going to be a reduction in some of the admin support for the planning policy team, but I think this is mostly the SIL reduction in SIL funding.
Got one more. The interest receivable from Suffolk on page 25, 7.4. Interest charged to the company of 5% per annum, 50-year loans. I mean, you can read through the section. Do we know what the cumulative figure is over the next 5 years for the deferred payment?
Cumulative figure, what, for the CIFCO income?
Yeah.
I don't have the latest CIFCO numbers to hand. I might be able to look them up over the next few minutes if you give me a chance, but
it was also the deferred payment.
And the deferred payments. I don't know. Yeah, do you have that?
So just to help clarify, so what we've put in the budget is the full repayment. The deferred payments is just an accounting treatment, if you like. So the budget is set on the full repayment. So those are the numbers that you can see in the MTFP at Appendix A, I think, is the MTFP. And you should be able to see the CIFCO income projections there over the next 4 years.
So the budget figure of 2.146 in table 10, that's the overall interest received from CIFCO. Is that for both councils?
Yeah. Yeah. No. Oh, sorry, no, that's for Babergh.
That is just for Babergh. That's interest received.
Yeah, okay. and the numbers over the next few years. So it's 2.146 for next year, 2.132, 2.115. Just over 2 million, and then again just over 2 million. So it's dropping off because they're annuity loans, so they're reducing as the term progresses.
Any members want to start? Councillor Wyman.
I think we all completely understand it's a really challenging position to be in, and I think that, as I said earlier, the longer term prospects over the next 2 or 3 years, look quite bleak, really, if I'm honest. And someone in central government needs to make a big decision about how councils are funded, really, because we're turning ourselves from being an organisation that should be supported through, central government support into an organisation where we're becoming a quasi business. And I think that lands quite difficult with residents. Residents don't really understand the principle of paying council tax and then being charged for lots of other additional services, which, the reality of the matter is we have to include, such as, moving to 100% cost recovery on all discretionary services. But I think it's a really tough story for residents to expect or understand. And when you look through the detail of where the complexity of funding, of charges and the various other things, the Chair mentioned CIFCO, all these other things which are a really complex net of deficits and credits, you can understand why people find it quite difficult to get through all this. But I think, the reality of the matter is we have got what we have got. We could all make decisions about CIFCO and other things that we made 10 years ago and say, well, we should, we shouldn't, or whatever. The thing is, for example, like say with CIFCO, it still maintains a positive contribution to council services. So, maybe we did make some good decisions. But the overall complexity is difficult, and we just have to get on with what our current job is and make sure we do what's right for residents. But I'd like to just say my personal thanks to the finance team for trying to balance the budget, because it's just a big job, and you don't really know what's round the corner. And until we get those longer term commitments from central government, we won't know. And it doesn't give certainty. If you ran a business, you can't run a business like this. It's very, very difficult. So you need that level of certainty. So my congratulations to the finance team and to the leader.
Thanks. First I'd like to echo Councillor Wyman's comments about the finance team and the work you put in. I mean, I know from talking to Cabinet members the amount of meetings you've been having over the last, probably months now, I imagine, to try and balance the budget is a big ask, to say the least. I do fear that hopefully I'm wrong, I do fear the current government have little sympathy with rural councils like ours, and most of their funding will go elsewhere, which will put more pressure on us. And as we try to meet the challenge of balancing the books, I do fear that we're going to get to, as we said, a tipping point where our services will have to take a big hit, and residents will start to suffer. And I mean, if we do have to start looking at some of the discretionary services and start, as was mentioned earlier, where if we are now the last rung on the ladder, some of these services, and if we have to cut them, where do people go next? And there must come a point somewhere where the cuts we're making are going to take out too big a hit on what we can provide, whether it's even just in things like planning. We cut officers, makes decisions hard, makes things harder, and it's going to happen in all departments, and it is a worry. And I'm not sure how we're going to meet the challenges, looking at the potential shortfalls next year and the year after, where those cuts are going to come from. So it is a concern, and I don't envy your tasks.
Members? I think following on from that, personally, it's become quite clear that, as Councillor Wyman mentioned, we're basically a business, and in any business you can only spend what you bring in and what you earn. And it does appear we are now becoming, with this full cost recovery, a business where we're chasing. And in business you never chase, because you never win. We're putting up dog poo bins, we're putting up and putting the pressure on our parish councils to up their precept to cover the increases. We're getting to the bottom now of what we can actually do. I see the Cabinet are going to review parking charges. Again, it's tickling with the bigger numbers. I mean, we're talking big numbers, and as much as those things can be increased and our charges can be increased, they'll never cover what we need in the future to commit and to what we want to. And I think, as Councillor Jameson said, there is going to come a crunch point where some serious discussions are going to have to take place about what we do cut. And I think, from my own personal point of view, I would rather have those discussions at the beginning of a financial year than towards the end of a financial year, to get a full grip of what services might be looked at and might be cut. So I'd like to express my thanks to Melissa, because it's a challenge, it's a huge challenge to do what you're doing, knowing that really we haven't got the money coming in to cover it. But I do think we should be looking ahead. I'm sure Councillor Ward looks ahead quite a lot, probably a year or two in advance, and buries his head somewhere and thinks, how am I going to do this? But I think the more we encourage all members to get round the table and have those hard discussions, I think will help you and, going forward, Cabinet to have a collective opinion as to where we think certain things might be cut, and make the job easier for everyone, including Melissa, going forward. But it's difficult times, and yeah, thank you very much for what you're doing. Are there any recommendations you'd like to put forward that we could add? Has anyone got any ideas for that? No. If we could, we would. If there's nothing else, are we ready to... Do we need a vote if we haven't got any recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. So in the absence of any additional recommendations, we just have the one recommendation to vote on, and that is that the committee notes the draft general fund budget proposals for 26-27 and the draft medium-term financial plan as detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If we can go to mod.gov, we'll take any vote on that? Or we're happy with hands?
We need a proposer and a seconder first.
Oh.
Sorry.
Councillor Wyman, do you want to propose? Councillor Granton? Yeah, hands. Those in favour? Thank you, carried. We'll move on to the next item, which is BOS 25/9 Housing Revenue Account, 26-27 Draft Budget and 30-year Business Plan. I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member to introduce the item to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. The 30-year HRA business plan sets out the Council's long-term investment strategy to maintain the quality of its housing stock and increase the size of the stock, if possible. The Council has a legal duty to ensure the HRA remains solvent, and the business plan must show that our revenue and investment plans are sustainable and appropriate. It is updated annually, and the latest plan can be found in Appendix A. Paragraphs 4.1 to 4.11 of the report explain the context and challenges facing our HRA, which the business plan has had to consider. There will be some additional borrowing to maintain the works programme, but the summary table in the business plan is showing a much improved position from last year. The plan maintains the minimum reserve balance of £1 million up to 2032 to 33, but after that it starts to improve with a surplus at year 30 of just under £55 million. The business plan assumes that, in addition to 5% rent tolerance on social housing relets, we will also be applying a 10% tolerance to sheltered housing relets from April 26. The business plan also assumes that £2 rent convergence to align social housing rents with target rent levels will be applied from 2027 to 28. A summary of rent setting history, including an explanation of rent tolerance, is provided in section 5, and a list of business plan assumptions, including the government's expected decision on rent convergence, is provided in section 6. The draft budget shows a deficit of £8.692 million, and the pressures and savings contributing to this are shown in table 1. And income, you'll see income has increased by £1.3 million, and expenditures decreased by £688,000. The primary reasons for the forecast deficit can be seen in the financing section. There is an increase in interest payments, but the big number is the revenue contribution to capital to finance our capital programme. Most of what was in the budget for the current year will now be carried forward due to a reduction in this year's capital programme. Table 5 lists the assumptions that have gone into preparing the budget, and these include proposed rent, service charge and utility charge increases. Rents will increase by CPI, which is 3.8%, plus 1%. And Table 6 provides a breakdown of staffing costs showing the total savings and pressures for each service area. After deducting the forecast budget deficit, there will be just under £4.4 million in the reserves, but this does depend on the capital programme being delivered on time and the need for the revenue contribution to capital. The proposed capital programme for 26 to 27 and the next 2 years shows a reduction over the 3 years, mainly due to completion of the decarbonisation work and the upland site development. No further new builds and acquisitions are proposed after 27 to 28 when the upland site will be completed. As a result of the government's reduction in the discount, we are expecting a decrease in the number of right-to-buy sales, and the government has also increased the flexibility of how we can use right-to-buy receipts, which is very welcome. In summary, there's been a marked improvement in the HRA. The business plan is showing a much better forecast for the 30 years, and it has a robust strategy to finance the work needed to improve and maintain stock quality so that revenue spent on repairs and reactive maintenance can be reduced. The only concern that I have is that the Cabinet's aspiration to increase our housing stock considerably we're not really in a position to achieve that just yet. We still need work to be done to see how we can move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? I'll start off if I can then. Page 66, 4.5, it refers to the survey that was carried out on the full stock, and the capital costs over the 30 years have been updated. The survey that was carried out and the costs that have been applied, are they staged costs? As in, the survey that was completed, was that highlighting things that need doing in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time? Or was it just things that need doing now to comply to certain legislation at the current time?
I think it's just looking at the current condition of the stock, isn't it, Jenny?
It is looking at the current conditions, so it does factor in the legislation we've got coming up.
So it does include
Yes,
assumptions for decent home standard and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and for that we've got a 5-year plan, and then we've smoothed it after that.
Yeah, so there's a 5-year plan for initial responses to the stock condition and forthcoming government legislation, but there's a smooth plan going forward for the remainder of the 30 years. So there is a long-term plan of works.
But that's not budgeted for.
It is. It's in the business plan. It's already catered for in the business plan.
It is all catered for in there. So we have a projection over the next 30 years of what needs to be done at certain properties at what stages going through that 30-year time period.
Yeah, we've got that plan. We're actually getting that into our new system at the moment, the total mobile system. So we don't have it the costed out. So what we've done is we've costed it out for the next 5 years. We've got the costs over the 30 years. So we do have those costs, but we've smoothed those costs so that we can get a proper plan in so that we can do things efficiently rather than just as and when they come up.
So we are content that we are doing things correctly, but also prudently so that we know what's coming. We're not going to be here in 2 years' time and be hit with a target for the next 5 years, which is going to be on new kitchens everywhere. I know we've put a lot into roofs recently, but new things, as long as we're aware of what's coming, budgeting for it, so that we don't get a hit later on, that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, we've got it all in for the current legislation. If they change the legislation, that's the only point where we might say we need some more in there.
Members? Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. I'm a bit concerned about the de-sheltering of more of our premises. And, you know, obviously this is possibly one of our more vulnerable groups of people if they need sheltered accommodation in the first place. And I know this is part of a process that we've been doing over the years. But their costs are going up if they continue to have the services. And you're looking to achieve total full cost recovery in 4 years' time. What if the residents can't afford this cost? But need the service? Is there anything that we do to help?
Yes, if that's the case, then as Jenny's just mentioned, they should be able to claim that on benefits through universal credit or any other benefit that they might be in receipt of. So it's not as if we're going to leave them in a position where they're going to be financially challenged. So benefits are available for is means tested in terms of who can pay, who can't pay. But a lot of the residents are able to pay out of their own means. But for those that can't, the benefit system will act as that safety net.
Members, questions? Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just take you to table 2C and the line rents, rates and premises insurance? I apologise for resting back on the I word again, but there's some quite significant variances within that line. Could you just explain, you know, what they are?
There's a huge change from the current year's budget and the quarter two forecast, which is more or less in line with budget, was slightly different, but the 26 to 27 budget is significantly higher. Yeah, is that? Yeah, Jenny, do you want to?
That's due to a change in the way we are recording insurance. So insurance used to go to the general fund and then it was charged across to us as part of the general fund recharges. But instead we're splitting the insurance costs at source so that we get the insurance costs relating to the HRA directly.
So instead of having a big number with dice and slice of numbers across the various sections, I understand that, yeah, thanks.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. On the same table, 2C, the item above that is other supplies and services. I know this is a similar question to Councillor Grandon's for the last report. I was wondering what that covers because there's quite a big increase in that as well. Thank you.
We're just checking the spreadsheet here.
Members got any other questions? Councillor Ward, can I ask one whilst we're waiting? Page 68, 4.3 mentions a slippage in the capital programme. Why?
Primarily, in fact, exclusively the Uplands development. There have been delays on that because that's the only item in the capital programme now.
What development, sorry?
Uplands, the Uplands middle school site in Sudbury.
That is still going forward?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. In answer to your question, it's again, we are improving the work following the transformation of our assets team. We have split out the damp and mould surveys and they now come under other supplies and services, whereas before they were with everything else. Yeah.
Another question. Page 70, table 2B, the void losses, they're going up next year by the look, we're certainly budgeting for it. The reason behind that is?
We've revised the estimate for void percentage at any one time. It's now 1.25% of our stock we're expecting to be void at any one time. Obviously that will vary during the year, but just to be on the safe side there. And our void turnaround times, although they're coming down, are still higher than we expect.
Is there any real reason for that, or is it just challenging to get them back into stream?
I think it's, I don't know, I would expect it's, the Cabinet Member for Housing might be a better place to answer that, but I think it's just a challenge of getting them back into condition after they've been let for a period of time.
We're still working on the voids contract as well.
Yes, and there's still a new voids contract that we're working on, so there are a number of factors involved in that, but we do expect to have a shorter turnaround time as the year progresses.
Members? Councillor Wyman?
More of a narrative question really to Jenny, which is obviously we're going through a process of moving away from independent contractors to our own people, which is a bit of a journey from where we were probably 18 months or so ago to where we are today. Inevitably, there's an on-cost with the initial change and the move to our own people. How do you feel that's progressing, and do you think we are 70% there, 80% there, or 100% there?
Yeah, I think that's really a question for Deborah. I know we are certainly getting there, but I couldn't give you a percentage of how far along we are, I'm afraid.
I know this is a sort of it's probably slightly off-piste, and it may not be the right kind of question really, but I'll let the chair stop me if he thinks I'm going too far. But with any business, and you know, our housing is a business really to some extent. It runs like a business anyway. When the head of an organisation, a key person, disappears, and you rely on, you know, a temp or somebody else stepping into role, I mean, that can sometimes have quite a big impact on a changing organisation particularly. Do you think that we are sufficiently resourced to see our way through this process? And if we are, then can we take some confidence that we'll be in the same position in terms of the strength of the account this time next year?
I think that our housing director has left us in a very strong position. There has been a radical change in a lot of the way we do things within our housing teams. We've got the two new teams that have been set up, having brought the building services back in-house. And we're starting to see the benefits of that, plus new IT systems. So I'm very confident that the good work that Deborah has put in place will outlast and live on beyond her departure.
I couldn't agree more, Councillor Wood. I absolutely accept that point. The point I was sort of moving into really was we're moving into a phase when we may not know what's next down the line really, and Deborah's taken us through a really challenging period with, you know, with certification, etc. And I think it's a concern to everybody that certainly within the, you know, the council and our residents, that potentially could be quite a significant change without the right person in place.
And we will have to recruit the right person to replace her for the remaining 2.5 years of this council's life.
That's very reassuring, Chair. Thank you very much.
I have a question. The table 8 on page 75, the one that says garages, forecourts and stores, huge budget figure for 26-27 compared to last year. I take it that's part of a programme, but what programme is that?
It's primarily getting asbestos removal and getting those garages in, either taking them down if they're not suitable for use anymore, or rebuilding them.
Okay, I mean, this is more for Councillor Ward, but members all know, specifically Councillor Ward, that we have been on about garages for many, many years, about putting them either to sleep, shall we say, or put them to better use. They're now costing us quite a significant sum. Are we just going to put them to sleep when we remove the asbestos, or are we still looking at utilising them to generate an income and a revenue stream? Because it is costing us money, whereas, as we all know over the years, they have become a burden and not used so much.
Yeah, we do have a new team looking at what to do with those garage sites going forward, whether they are still to remain as garages or whether they are ripe for redevelopment into housing sites, because a lot of them aren't used for one reason or another, and there are other ways of accommodating people's cars without having rows and rows of garages.
I mean, with all due respect, we've been having garage reviews on sites for many, many years, and it seems to be we're just going over the same old process without actually ever deciding what to do. So it would be good if we could perhaps come up with a positive, conclusive plan rather than it cost us money year on year.
Well, it is a new team, and I agree. We do need to refocus on that. We have been looking, obviously the attention and the primary focus has been on other things in the past couple of years, but now that everything else is moving forward in a positive way, I think, yes, with this new team in place, we can start to look at this seriously over the next year.
Members, other questions? I'll touch if I can. Has no one else got any questions? On page 76, the table at the bottom, you mentioned uplands earlier. As you say, it's still in the budget programme. Do we foresee that coming forward by the time this council ceases?
Uplands? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got it in for the next 2 years, so taking up to the end of the 27 to 28 financial year. And as you know, that will be the last year under current plans that Babergh will exist.
Okay. And who will be undertaking that project?
I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to find out for you. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Members? Any other questions? Or do you wish to go into debate? Or should we... Oh, I've got Councillor Clover. Has Councillor Clover got any questions? In that case, we'll go into debate. Members? Anyone want to say anything? Councillor Wyman, can always rely on you.
Thank you. Yet another challenging set of circumstances. I just wish we had more capital to do the things that we would love to do. And it's just such a frustrating situation to be in, where we have potential things we could do better in terms of like building our own social housing with our own capital. I've had offers of land from farmer residents, etc., within one or two of the areas that I deal with, and it's very difficult to sort of square the circle when we get such fantastic opportunities to do things. And I say the absence of capital is extremely frustrating. We do need to do more. I think we can't live in South Suffolk and not understand the massive rental pressures within the private sector that people face, and the lack of availability of our own social housing, really, in locations where we'd like to see it. Particularly as we tend to acquiesce to the major towns, but also within our own communities. You know, we have an ageing population. 34% of people that live in Keffer St Mary are over 60 years old, and that trend is increasing, and yet we have only 38 social homes in the ward. So I just think it'd be great to have more, but I think we all understand what the challenges are, and it's not there. But maybe one day we'll have something better. But the change, and I alluded to the point earlier on, from contractors to our own people, I think has made a big difference. I get some really positive feedback from people within communities I'm not really involved with, but live in, where things are improved and where we're getting much better responsiveness. So, you know, great job, I think, and the finances remain challenging. So, thanks very much.
Members? No? Again, I'll follow Councillor Wyman. I think the position we're in now to where we were 5, 6, 7 years ago is remarkable. I think we've progressed so much, and I think our tenants can see the difference, but there's still a long way to go. And I commend the people who've worked hard and tirelessly in getting us to where we are today, because, as I say, it was a challenging set of circumstances that we've had to face. So I can only say well done. I think going forward in the remainder of our term here, we're in a good position to achieve even more. And yeah, well done to everyone involved. We've got no recommendations, I believe. If we can go to a proposer and a seconder for this, Councillor Wyman, Councillor Jameson, and we'll go to a hand vote on this paper. All those in favour? Right. We are now on to forthcoming decisions list. So if you members and officers want to leave us, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate all your work. Members, have you all looked at the forthcoming decision list? And are there any questions that you want to raise regarding that? No? Okay, we'll take that as a no. Number 10, our Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Work Plan. Have members looked at that and have they any questions or any comments they wish to raise? Read that. No? Okay, we'll take that as a given. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wyman.
Right, do we not, the June meeting? Oh, I see, no, it's okay. I see that's now joined. Sorry, my apologies.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Everyone, oh, Councillor Jameson, yes?
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. There's nothing on my radar at the moment, certainly not in terms of scoped items where we've had enough conversations with officers to be able to get that sort of sorted in time for that meeting. But if members had other suggestions for if we wanted to use that date for anything informal, I'm open to suggestions and we can take that conversation outside of the meeting if people wanted to. Thank you, Chair.
Have you got anything in mind?
No, but see what I can
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. Regarding the February meeting, the review of car parking charges, could you please tell me a little bit about what is planned, and then can I have the opportunity to say something?
Of course, thank you, Councillor Grandin. So from my understanding from speaking with officers and cabinet members, that is going to be just a year's look at how the charges were implemented and the finances that have come from that. As far as my understanding goes, we've also got an independent report from the University of Suffolk on the implementation of the car parking charges that the Cabinet commissioned a couple of months ago. That should be ready in time for us to review that at that February meeting. As for the more specific details, I'm not too sure, but you're perfectly welcome to contact the Director for Operations, who is responsible for that item, about the details that would be included in that.
Do you know what that review from the university is looking at, please?
We have no detail about the overall review. I mean, it was brought to our attention earlier this month that one was being commissioned prematurely, I believe, because we're not at a 12-month...
Sorry, I just...
Prematurely, I believe, because we're not at a 12-month cycle. But these things do take time. But as Alicia said, the idea was to carry on from our 6-month review. It would be a full 12-month review of what the implementation of the parking charges, where we are and how that has gone through the process over the 12 months and what effect it's had. So the planned meeting is a continuation of the 6th monthly review, but it'll be a full 12-month review.
Thank you.
So there'll be more detail on any surveys that have been commissioned at a later point. and at what point they were commissioned and when the data was gained, you can query that and question that at that appropriate time.
So, if members wish to do a survey of car parking in their areas, could we bring that to the meeting, and could that be part of the meeting if we did do that? I'm not saying we will do that, but if we did do that, can we make that part of the meeting?
I mean, there's nothing stopping you from my point of view, as Councillor Clover, who sits behind you, has done in Sudbury, to do your own review. Whether we could take that on board as an official evidence in the scrutiny committee is another matter that would have to be reviewed, and I think the decision taken. But feel free to do whatever you wish in your own ward, because that's entirely up to you. But as I say, whether we would adopt that as an official document, I think that's open to review for sure.
If we got the questions examined by whoever wished to do so, would that make any difference?
It's in my opinion, it's an external piece. It's an external document, so it hasn't gone through the council. As I say, I think that we would have to take anything like that and view it on its own merits and make a decision nearer the time if that was presented to us as a document to be included in any 12-month review. I think it would be incorrect for us to say yes or no at the moment, but as I say, if you want to do one in Hadley or Sudbury or Laverton, then as members you're quite entitled to do that, and you can refer to it, I'm sure, but whether we take it in a debate or in a conversation is another matter for review. But yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Wyman.
Could I ask the governance officer, please, on planning pre-application advice, meeting 18th of September. I wasn't actually present at that meeting, but I've noticed that there's several not started actions. Has 1.6 and 1.7 potentially been rejected by planning department?
We're on the. We're still in the work plan at the moment, but we can jump on to the.
Sorry.
Are there any further questions on the work plan? Then we'll jump on to item 11.
Sorry, Chair. I apologise.
And pick up your question. Listen.
That's fine, thank you, Councillor Wyman. So I have no update on this at the moment. I was telling the Chair that I have tried pushing for the Cabinet to respond to these recommendations, but at the moment, not being very responsive. So I will be making sure to push this week for them to at least prove that the recommendations are at the very least being considered, because there are numerous amounts of recommendations on the action tracker that are still listed as not started, and I'm not very happy about that. So we will, I'll do my best to chase this side of Christmas, so next time in the new year we can be at a good point.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm amazed they've not rejected them. I can't believe that these have been rejected.
I mean, I picked up on one that goes back to October 24, reference the almshouses. I mean, it still sits there, and we do have those in the district, and there's several of them that do need assistance and repair, and yet, due to the way that we're statute, we can't invest in them, and it's something that was raised back in October 24, well over a year ago, and we've still got no movement on it at all. It seems, as much as the housing team have had a lot on their plate and have done a lot of good work, that's something that really should be addressed and have an answer on. Councillor Wyman.
I think there's a really deeper question in that particular subject matter that's within that, which is, and I sort of alluded to the point of where we do get the opportunities to acquire land, and we aren't sufficiently proactive sometimes in seizing these opportunities. And I accept there's inadequate capital sometimes to do these jobs, but the process of finding social housing, which is what Mary was talking about when she raised that is really important.
I agree. Any other questions, members? I think all I say is Alicia does go to Cabinet and she does re-emphasise to them the importance of replying and actioning our recommendations. And we just have to keep persevering and hoping that those Cabinet members do act. Councillor Jameson.
So just for my clarity, when it says not started, so we've asked the director or portfolio holder to do something and they've just not done anything, or have they said they'll look into it and not come back to you, or?
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. So what it means by not started is that the recommendations have been communicated to the portfolio holders and the officers responsible, but I either haven't had a response back on the recommendation or I haven't been provided a significant amount of information for me to be satisfied that those recommendations are properly being considered at this moment in time. So the second I get some assurance that they're having quite proactive conversations about our recommendations, that's when I would then list them as ongoing. But until they've not even been thoroughly acknowledged, I keep it as not started to add a little bit more of extra pressure on.
Okay, thanks. It does seem strange. I mean, not, you know, fair enough, I can understand them not having the resource to do any work, but to not consider, even consider and come back to you with a satisfactory response that they're not prepared to look at it, doesn't seem satisfactory really to me.
I mean, it calls into question what process do we have in place as an ONS to, we rely on Alicia for this, but is this something that we could take off book and perhaps have a chat about? And should it be the chair that then writes to the appropriate cabinet member on behalf of the whole committee and start that process? Because at the moment I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do it, but I don't know if that's been done before or whether that's something we should start reviewing and actioning on a set time scale rather than an officer doing it. Perhaps a chair and a committee, us committee members, write collectively through the chair to try and push them along.
Chair, could I recommend that once the cabinet member, etc., has been given sufficient time to respond to that point, which the governance officers alluded to, that a letter from the chair or note from the chair to the portfolio holder saying, you've had your time now to do this, I expect a response within 5 days, 10 days or whatever.
Do you think it appropriate that we set a timescale, a blanket timescale of 3 months, 2 months, rather than have them bespoke, so that we can react in a set time frame rather than just leave it a little bit flaky? Councillor Grandin was first. I'll just go to Councillor Grandin and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Yes, I've long been frustrated about the lack of, I don't know if recognition is the right word, or the lack of recognition of the importance of ONS in the cabinet structure, that people have forgotten, that this is an important adjunct to the cabinet model, and that they have certain, both officers and cabinet members need to understand that we're here to help them and provide friendly advice and criticism on the work. And I wonder if we maybe need to, as a committee and through you, sort of formulate strategies along the way, things that you've just been saying, on how to kind of, I don't know if educate's the right word, but to remind both officers and cabinet some rules, perhaps.
Councillor Wine.
Thank you. I'd echo exactly what Councillor Grandin is saying, really, because I think we've suffered with it for several years now, really, in terms of sometimes lack of responsiveness, and it concerns me that the governance officer isn't treated sometimes perhaps with the respect that she deserves, and I think we do need to be a little bit more forceful. I think we get better portfolio holder turn-ups now than we have had in the past, but I do think it's important that, as I said, Councillor Grandin said, we do get that responsiveness, which sometimes it's easy just to leave it or forget it or whatever. But I think when we put items in the schedule to be considered, we either know that they're going to deal with it or they're not. And if they're not dealing with it, I think you need to tell them that you need to be really clear with us what your position is.
I think we'll come up with a set scale, a time scale, and then put that out to members. And if we're all in agreement, we'll initiate that. I would propose probably a 3-month would be sufficient. I don't think it's too little, and I don't think it's too much either. So I think the 3-month window, I mean, if we're all happy with that now, we can sort of agree that Alicia can get something. Councillor Carruthers was, sorry.
Yeah, so would it be that Alicia sends them the, these are the recommendations, blah, 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 3 months, so, and then 3 months later you write to them, or 3 months later you ask them again, and then you write to them. I suppose that's what we'd have to do.
The chair writes to them and says, could you give me an update on these?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would just be Alicia chasing up her own, which she does now anyway. So I think if the chair does that on behalf of the whole committee, and then it just re-emphasises the point that the committee are following this. It's not just Alicia who's following it. This is important. We are here to help, and as Catherine said, we are here to help the residents, the members, the cabinet, the council. This is our body to help and suggest. We don't want to be ignored or forgotten, because what we put forward is to us a valuable suggestion and a recommendation. Councillor Brandon.
And on some past occasions, we've had situations where the portfolio holder hasn't attended a meeting on their area, and they can actually be commanded, if that's the right word, to attend, because they should be here, and they can be told they have to attend, but in some cases in the past they haven't, so I think that needs to be tightened up as well.
We can look at all that going forward, I think, to try and re-emphasise the importance of ONS in the structure of what we've got at the moment, which is cabinet, full council model. Any other questions? I'm not sure, Councillor. No. Yeah, Councillor Clover, far away.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure whether I was allowed, but it's just a thought. So Peter Randall has obviously brought in the new inquiry system now, and this is where you triage. Are there elements of that that can be lifted and used here, because you're not getting the response that you deserve?
Yeah, that's fine. So we have explored using a bit more technology to help us to track actions, which I'm happy to progress a bit further. So we actually have a recommendation tracker system on our ModGov tech. So at the moment on the action tracker on the sheets that you can see in your reports is stuff that I track just manually myself. But with ModGov you can put recommendations into ModGov, and it would send automated emails. So it would, we could set a deadline date. So the closer you get to the deadline date, it could send emails every 3 days and then every day saying there's no update here. So it is something that we're thinking of. There's a few little tweaks I want to make to it first before the system works perfectly, but that is something that we do have in our back pocket to use.
I mean, if members are happy, we've got January vacant at the moment. Would members be happy to meet and perhaps chat through this? And if Alicia can get some more detail of how yeah, in a way, yeah. Members be happy with that? Councillor Wyman?
Yeah, I just wanted to really make it clear that, I mean, I've been on ONS really now for sort of 2.5 years, ever since I was a councillor, and the work that Alicia's put into the action tracker is significant. And I think we're seeing, I think this is now the impact of things not sort of being kicked into the long grass and lost, really. So in a way, this is a result of what we've tried to achieve, which is not to lose things in the process. So I don't want what we're saying now to detract from the great work that Alicia's done on making sure we actually see what's happening, and there is some level of responsiveness from either portfolio holders and or officers.
I think the basis is there. Alicia has done a fantastic job what she's doing. Now we want to utilise her skills even more and take her guidance as well as our own individual guidance and thoughts and just make it that bit stronger and that bit more forceful in a way. So perhaps we'll look to pencil in that January meeting, and if nothing crops up, we can have, as Councillor Graham said, a little workshop and work on what we want to achieve through this process, which is basically having answers to the questions we ask. Okay, no other questions? We'll draw this meeting to a close, if that's okay. Thank you very much, members.